That's right. I've killed women and children. I've killed just about everything that walks or crawled at one time or another. And I'm here to kill you, Gerald, for what you did to Dan.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. Gerald is here with you. We got a retro review this week, the Roulette review. Over on the other side is the Smith to my Wesson, Nicholas, the other P on the pod. What's up there, brother?
Sorry, I thought you were a can. I was just trying to practice, like get some target practice in on you there, but
Got to get really close.
How is it going, Gerald? Audio audience, you're missing a treat tonight. He's got like a little beanie on, a little hoodie action. He looks like he's headed out to rob a convenience store after this.
I might actually. We need some stuff around the house here. I got sick today. I had to leave work early. I got a really sore throat, but you know what, man? I power through. But that's why I sound like I've been chain smoking for 2 days straight. So I apologize, audio audience.
Be honest.
And then
I want you to be honest with me. You watched this movie, right?
Yeah.
You watched this movie again for this review, and you were like, you know what I'm going to do? I need to get my voice down to that Eastwoody register. So you've been just shrieking and trying to get a sore throat so you could get. I can't even do it. My Eastwood just ends up sounding like a Batman impression, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it did kind of bring it down there in the register a little bit. Yeah, it wasn't intentional.
Tell me your name is William Money. Go ahead, do it.
My name is Will Money. How'd that sound? Was that good?
It sounds like you're like an understudy for like the Unforgiven, but the super off-Broadway musical version.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. That'd be awesome. All right, guys, look, we spun the wheel a couple weeks ago. We landed on me. I finally got to make a selection for a retro review, and we chose 1992's Unforgiven, starring and directed by Clint Eastwood. I have a ton of thoughts on this movie, which not shocking since I chose it, so I'm going to hold my commentary. Nick, before we get into the dissection of Unforgiven, as always, we start out every episode with what we call one big question.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
We had Clint right in there. There he is. He's
Clint,
getting us
right?
ready.
That's
Clint from
wasn't
30
even
Here.
thinking about it. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. But yeah, there's Clint making an appearance every week, and now we're talking about one of his films.
Every week.
So what do you got for me, man, or do you want me to go first?
All right, no, I got you, baby. I was thinking about this because this is a film about an anti-hero.
Sure.
Gerald, lay on me. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do a list. I don't need your top 5, but then you're gonna round it out to top 10. I don't need that whole thing. But just like lay on me like one or some. Aside from, I know how much you love this movie, so I won't worry about this one. But like other anti-heroes in films that you really, really love. I'm curious.
That's actually a bit of a head scratcher for me. The first one that came to mind, I thought that's what you were going to ask me, and I started kind of like puzzling. Is Tyler Durden from Fight Club?
Yeah.
Brad Pitt. He would probably be one of my go-tos for sure. Obviously, like Tony Soprano, that's a TV show, but
yeah.
You know, I mean, he's doing the dad thing and trying to be a family man, but obviously, killing people on the side.
I saw some lists. I saw some lists of this that included Jack Sparrow. Would you include Jack Sparrow as an anti-hero? Maybe only in the first movie. But like
that's an interesting take. I wonder if it's because just inherently he's like a criminal as a pirate. So
I think that's why they're including him on the list. But yeah. that is
I would not have thought that. No.
Grossly like. I mean, maybe
I would have.
I could almost buy an argument of just the first movie, but then like there's no way he transitions like straight up into a hero like by the time you get to like the latter parts of that series or whatever.
What about like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, Christian Bale's character? Have you seen American Psycho?
Would he be an anti-hero?
You don't think?
In what way is he an anti-hero? I'm curious. I'm curious for that. Because he's like, is it because he's like, I don't even know.
I think because I was thinking more because the plot twist. I mean, he's just basically innocent. You know, it's all in his head or whatever.
Is it?
But he does some pretty brutal things in the.
Is it all in
the
his
movie.
head?
I think that's how it comes to fruition at the end of the film, right?
No.
Now we got to do American Psycho on a roulette spin.
No, like the great thing about American Psycho. I mean, if we ever do it, we could talk about it. But it's kind of like Total Recall in that way, where there is no definitive answer. Well, okay, no, there is a definitive answer if you've ever seen the American Psycho sequel that Mila Kunis was in, because it very definitively thinks he was a serial killer. It very definitively takes that, but like, no, it's very, very deliberately. There's an argument for both in the film. I think,
Yeah,
like, same
that's
way with
true.
Total
That's true.
Recall, it's definitely a solid argument you can make. Is he really like dreaming, and like, is this a whole manufactured thing in his head, or is he really this like badass secret agent on Mars? You know,
True.
with like a dude hanging out of another dude's chest, a queen, you know, like all that. Yeah,
That's fair. I mean, I guess I'll stick with Tony Soprano. I mean, he's the ultimate. I mean, I know
Tony
it's not
Soprano's a
movie.
good one.
Yeah, so that's probably my number one anti-hero, and then Tyler Durden from Brad Pitt as well. So
You know what one I
Yeah,
really is one I really, really love, and it's kind of why I thought of this question for it specifically.
Mhm.
It's the comedian from Watchmen. Like, I mean, either
Yeah.
the movie or the graphic novel. But like,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, he is a sadistic, like sick, twisted bastard, but also like there's like a virtue almost, at least in his eyes, even to what he does. You know, and
That's true.
I mean, I could have also, like, some people will say Rorschach there, but I don't think Rorschach is an anti-hero as much as he's just like anti. Does that make sense?
Sure,
I don't know
sure.
if that makes
No,
sense.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. No, that's a good one. I wouldn't have thought of that either. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So my big question is a bit of a like kind of life reflection question. Okay.
Oh man.
Now we're gonna get into it when we talk about Unforgiven here tonight, but the reason I'm springboarding to this question for you is because this is the last movie that I saw with my father in a theater. He was a giant Clint Eastwood fan, and at a young age I use the term "make me." I appreciate them now, but at the time he would make me watch the reruns of the old westerns that were playing on TBS or TNT or local cable or whatever.
What you're saying
just
is your
freaking-
dad would make your day.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
okay,
He
yeah.
would definitely attempt to make my day. So he was just very excited for this movie when it came out. It was Clint Eastwood going back to the Western genre, which he had not been in for like 10 or 15 years before this movie came out. And it was just like an event for him. He was so excited. And my dad was not an excitable guy, so that really stuck in my memory. And we went to see the movie together, and I kind of share that memory. So my question to you, for one big question, Nick, is what movie do you think your kids are going to associate with you that you've shared with them over the years? Like a memory that you have with them of watching a film?
Man. I mean, I took them to see like a bunch of different stuff, like when they were younger, especially.
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm trying to think of like what would be like good ones, because like it'd probably be less like stuff like taking them to the theater and stuff as it would be like watching things at home with them. Like,
Sure.
I used to own when after Batman Forever came out, they had Batman 89, they had Batman Returns and Batman Forever in a three tape set. You got 3 VHSs in there with all 3 of those movies in them. And then I had Batman and Robin on VHS as well. So like I would, because I love those movies, so I would put those on all the time for the kids. I think probably watching those kinds of movies. Those movies,
Yeah,
especially, I would say, like, though, like they love. I know they love those movies, and like I loved watching those movies with them, because like Batman '89 is the movie that made me love movies. Like, it is the movie that made me into the film lover that I am. So
That's great.
It's probably definitely those. I mean, that's from like a young age, and I know at some point I gave them those VHSs. I mean, I'm sure those are long gone somewhere else now, because I mean it's VHS, it's dead format. So, you know.
Well, I was just thinking, and to your point, real quick, about Batman '89 and those those films that spawned off of that. I mean, superhero films were in a much different place back then in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And it was
Well, they
an
were
event,
events
and it was
because
cool.
you got one every. What was
Yeah.
the last one before that one? Superman 4
I
in
guess,
like 87, which was a canon movie, so it doesn't even really qualify as
yeah.
a movie in that sense.
Yeah, sure.
Old Nuclear Man. Hey, Nuclear Man, Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor.
Anti-hero. Oh,
Back around to Unforgiven. See how it all ties together, Gerald? It's like we're playing
does
6
tie
Degrees of Unforgiven today.
we are. Well, for me, I actually texted my daughter and I asked her. You know, she's 22. She's in college. And I asked my 10-year-old as well, Logan. Now, my 4-year-old's a little too young. Obviously, we're just watching Disney and, you know, crap with him at this point. But I asked my 10-year-old, and then I texted my daughter, and she had the same answer. So I think it's fair to say that my kids are going to always associate Stand By Me with me because I introduced both of them to that film at a young age, like 8 or 9 years old. It's rated R because there's a lot of bad language in it.
Now, I want to call foul on this, Gerald, because you gave me so much crap back in the old time of the P's when you used to do the countdowns. I put
the
this
family friendly.
I put this on like one of my top like family.
You did, yeah.
It wasn't like family friendly countdown, was it?
I
Was
think
it, just,
it
like,
was
family movies
movie
or something.
It was movies to watch with the whole family
Or something like that. Yeah, but it was like something like that. And I put this on my list. It might have even been my number 1 or something like that. And you gave me so much crap over it. And this is the movie you're pulling. This one.
Hey, when I pick it, it's okay. I just got to give you a hard time when you pick it. You know, that's
such a good movie. God, man,
it really is, man. And just to be able to know that that's stuck with them. You know, for my daughter, we're talking, you know, 14 years ago, she would have watched that, and she like, you know, still that's the first thing she said right away.
I will watch that movie in a minute. You know what we ought to do? We ought to do that movie too. Man,
we should, yeah.
1 episode a week's not enough. Like at this point, we got to start like cranking out some of these bad boys,
especially this time of year. Am I right?
Man. Well, we're gonna we're not even gonna be able to do retro stuff. We've got so much stuff to dabble into over the next couple of months.
It's about to get
busy.
For sure. All right, Nicholas. So one big question is in the books, which means it is time to get into our discussion for this week's retro roulette review for Unforgiven from 1992.
Oh, sorry.
Let me just tell everyone while Nick is trying to locate the 2 in his book. If you want to get in on the action, we spin the roulette wheel, I don't know, roughly once a month or so, and we will pick a movie. Either one of us will pick it or our patrons will throw some movies into the hat and we'll pick one out from them. We still have a huge bucket of movies. There are patrons I've selected. I'm probably going to ask them to put even more in that bucket after the holidays. If you want to get in on that action, the information's in the show notes. You can join us over on Patreon for as little as $1 and fuel this, keep the beard growing. Every $1 I get, I grow the beard out another millimeter. So
eventually the beard's going to get so long it's going to circle back up around the top of his head and swallow him.
Finally, I'll have hair. Am I right?
I mean, it's just
this is
you're paying to eventually have Gerald just be encompassed by his own facial hair. So
just a ball of hair. How could you not get in on that action? All right, so the roulette review this week, Unforgiven, 1992, directed by Clint Eastwood. At the top of every review, we give our score out of 10, and we have not discussed it with each other. Obviously, it is no mystery that I'm a huge fan of this film. I'm going to give my score out of 10, and Nick is going to give his score out of 10 in the early score reveal.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm going to score, and then I never score. It's not fair.
Oh,
it's
my
fair.
God. I
It
wonder
is
what
fair.
Gerald's going to give this movie. I'm
All right, here we
so
go. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
It is a 10 out of 10 for me, and
I'm giving it a 7.
Damn you,
I'm giving it a 7.
A 7? You're giving the greatest Western in American cinema a 7.
Yo, it ain't even close. No.
So you're doing what Wayne did for war films.
No. We this
Wow.
best
This is
Western
unbelievable.
of all time.
In my opinion.
No, that's a whole different kind of conversation. Speaking of which,
Like top 3.
you mentioned Saving Private Ryan as well. I went to see it, Gerald, on the big screen last week. I saw it in theaters a week ago. I'd never seen it in the theater before. I've seen it a million times, obviously. Man,
Oh, wow.
25th anniversary.
That's a good
Man,
one.
that movie holds up.
I was gonna
God,
say,
that
was it
movie
like an
holds up.
anniversary or something?
Yeah, 25th anniversary. Yeah, that movie holds up. So if you've never seen that in the theater either, and you get a chance with like the anniversary, I don't know if they're still doing screenings of it or anything like that anywhere. But if you ever get the chance to see that movie in a theater, it will give you a whole new appreciation and respect for sound design in film. You
All right.
feel like there are bullets whizzing by you. Like it's just so immersive. And I
Wow.
saw it at my Regal, which is not like the pinnacle of cinematic experience by any means. Anyway, not that movie we're talking about. We're talking about Unforgiven.
Back to Unforgiven. So going forward, guys, this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. We're not going to do a spoiler-free section, the retro review. The film's, hell, I don't know, how old is it? 30 years old-ish?
Yeah, 31 now, yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, then come back after you watch Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, which, by the way, is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. And in my opinion, it is one of the greatest films of all time, and I think it's in the conversation as one of the best Westerns of all time, too. But we will have that conversation tonight as the episode unfolds here. So, Nick, I've talked about this movie before. Everybody knows I love it. I chose it for the review tonight. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. I'm going to talk about why I love it and why it means so much to me. But why don't you start us off? Where, generally speaking, what are your thoughts on Unforgiven up here at the top?
I mean, okay. Performances mostly anyway, phenomenal. I mean, utterly and completely phenomenal. I mean, the way this film is shot, I mean, only I mean, well, okay, all the other filmmakers that could have made a film like this are dead, you know. Like your John Fords and Sergio Leone, like things like that. Like
Sure, yeah.
So like this was only a film like that Clint Eastwood could make. I mean, it's steeped in that kind of in that kind of Western frame, when the way that it's shot, the way that the movie's paced. A lot of Westerns, and I know you know this as well, but like a lot of Westerns are paced like drudgingly slow, but like deliberately so, because you're kind of supposed to just kind of like it's a quieter, simpler time. And I really, watching a movie like this, it really gives you more of an appreciation for just like that kind of thing. Like, because they don't make, like, how many movies have we reviewed, Gerald, since we started, you know, doing this version of the piece together? How many movies have we reviewed like this that just are this slow? And I don't mean that as a detriment. That's not a detriment against the film. But how many have we watched that are this slow? Like, it's a very simple.
Maybe Silence. I mean, other than that, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, maybe Silence. Maybe Silence. Yeah. Past Lives too, maybe.
Sure.
Where the pacing is very slow and it's very, very deliberate. I think this won an Oscar for editing as well. I think that's one of the Oscars that it carried away. And I like the pacing of the film is phenomenal. The way the film's shot is utterly and completely phenomenal. Like I said, acting for the most part is really, really wonderful. I enjoyed a lot about the movie. Like, don't take the score as some kind of knock against it or anything like that. I didn't go to see it as the last film ever in the theater with my dad, and have had 30 years with it. Okay,
sure. Yeah.
I don't have that. I don't have that to bring to this. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. I think, like, as a Western, I think it holds up, even though it was made 30 years ago. I definitely think it's still. It still holds up today. Had a couple of issues that I will talk about when we get to that point or whatever. But like this is I don't care if you've talked about this film a million times on this show or whenever, wherever. This is top 3 all time for you. This is 10 out of 10. This is tied to like memories of you with your dad. Like, I want to hear why this is like so much up there for you. That's what I want.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the personal connection, you know, I kind of already touched on, but I mean, my dad was just a huge Clint fan. I mean, that was his favorite actor, and we watched all the.
I want to jump in really quick though.
Sure, yeah.
How did being such a huge Western fan, because this is a very, very much a deconstruction of that mystique of the Western. How did your dad like this? Did your dad love this? Did he not like it? Was he just kind of in the middle of it?
He liked it a lot.
Okay.
I mean, I'll go ahead and talk about it now, because that was a good segue for me to mention this. I didn't know when this was going to come up in the review, but there's only 2 times that I can remember seeing my dad cry, and one of them was during this movie. So I think that he was overcome with his kind of love and connection to Clint Eastwood's catalog, and this movie kind of plays like that swan song for Clint Eastwood too. It mirrors his Hollywood career in a lot of ways. He did some great shit after this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Million Dollar Baby, and I mean, you could throw anything out there that you could say was a good film. I mean, there were several of them, but it played much differently when you're watching it because I mentioned earlier how he kind of came back to this Western genre, and you said exactly something else I wanted to mention tonight, that he kind of deconstructed it, and he filmed it from it was almost like this movie had a lot of the stuff that was missing from the other Westerns, but that probably happened in those movies. They just didn't showcase them, and you just didn't see them. A lot of those kind of like calm talks with friends and just that kind of beneath the surface, behind the scenes stuff that we didn't see in those gunslinging Westerns of the old days that even Clint was in himself.
Yeah.
So I love that about the movie too, that it kind of goes against type there. But to answer your question, my dad loved it, but I also think he was super biased because it was Clint Eastwood, and because he kind of thought to himself, well, this might be Clint's last movie, and what a way to go out. I mean, you also mentioned the Oscars. I mean, Best Picture, Best Director. Gene Hackman won for Supporting Actor. Freeman was nominated. Clint was nominated. It won Best Editing. I think it won Cinematography. Like, I mean, it's one of the greats in that respect, from like, having awards kind of rain down on it as well. But, the personal stuff with my dad and everything was definitely the catapult for it, and is the reason why I saw it at a young age. But it's just stuck with me for so long, and every time I watch it, and this is no exaggeration. I mean, people are going to think I'm saying this because we're reviewing the movie, but I've seen it probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 times, somewhere in that range over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I have goosebumps at
Wow.
certain scenes in this movie, and particularly the last act when he's avenging, Ned's death, and he activates, right? Because the whole movie has been these whisperings and like people recollecting the bastard that he was. And, you mentioned in the cold open, killing women and children. And, I mean, there's so many different like little things sprinkled throughout where like we hear it, but we're seeing this kind of broken down old father who just wants to provide for his kids and doesn't want to be that anymore. And then to see him in an instant grab the whiskey and just turn back into the fucking murderous bastard that he was his whole life. It's one of the better revenge movies of all time, in my opinion. And I've already mentioned one of the best Westerns too. I mean, I love it. I think it's the best in Eastwood's catalog. I'd like to know what you think about that. I think it's his best film, at least from the director's chair. I'm in love with this movie, man. It's one of my favorites of all time.
Man, I probably have way too many Eastwood blind spots to really be able to say like yay, nay on like best ever of Eastwood's catalog. I'm looking through his filmography now, and I'm just kind of trying to find stuff in here that I really loved. Gran Torino, I really loved. Letters from Iwo Jima. You ever see that? He did both of them. He did Flags of Our Fathers, and he did Letters from Iwo Jima. I really liked the second one. But I mean, both of those are phenomenal movies. You talked about great movies that he made after Unforgiven and everything like that. Man, that's something you got to sit with, try to figure out, try to figure that out. But yeah.
Well, what were the issues for you? I mean, I want to kind of talk about the performances, and I want to talk about all the main players in the movie, but I also kind of want you to lead that conversation because I'm curious to what brought it down for you.
Well, so it's the kid, man. I hated that performance. I hated the Schofield kid. Yimes Wolvet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I hated that performance. I thought it was so whiny and sniveling and everything like that. I mean, I get it. He's supposed to be trying to act like he's this big tough guy, and he's really not, and he's really more vulnerable. He's never actually killed a man or anything like that. He's never actually been in that kind of a scenario. But like, I found the performance to be grating. Like especially when you're on screen with Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman, I'm just like, God, one of them, especially being like those two. I mean, especially you think about Eastwood like that, just like as the crotchety Western character who doesn't take crap from anybody or whatever. You have like 50 times during this movie, I just expected him to turn around and shoot him, just to
Right.
drop him right there
Sure.
and just be done with it. I did not like that performance at all. I really it was it just
It's definitely the weakest in the movie. I'll give you that for
yeah,
sure.
it definitely is. And then like it has Dumbledore in it, Gerald. It has Richard Harris in it as English Bob.
Yeah.
But why?
Well, I think it was. I hate when movies do exposition through like kind of dialogue through the main characters. So I think that English Bob's insertion into the story was to provide that exposition for Little Bill and what he was not going to tolerate in Big Whiskey. I've always saw it as a visual kind of exposition. Like, he was made the example of, and I mean, Richard Harris is fucking awesome in this movie. Dude.
Richard Harris is great. Richard
I feel
Harris
like maybe
is great.
he got nominated for this too. I don't have it in front of me, but I feel like maybe
I'm
he
not
did.
sure. Yeah,
I know
he's
he
great
was in
in
the
it.
conversation.
Like, I won't tell
But-
you he's not great in it. And I mean, it's Richard Harris. Richard Harris
So
is great.
good, man. How about that scene though? So let's go ahead and talk about that scene when Little Bill kind of turns into that kind of like scary figure because
Man, when Hackman dials it up, man,
Mhm.
God, Hackman's good.
yeah,
Like when Hackman dials it up, man, like you just miss performances like that in movies nowadays, don't you? Like
Yeah,
when
for
Hackman
sure.
dials it up, he's a mean, sinister bastard, and you just
Yeah.
know it. Like
he's like, you've been talking about the Queen again on
Hackman's
fucking
good.
Independence Day.
Hackman's so good, dude. Oh,
Yeah, he really is.
yeah, I mean, no wonder. Like, I wasn't surprised because I was reading about like the awards and stuff. This one, like afterward, I was like, I'm not surprised that Hackman took away the Oscar for this one for supporting because, I mean, he's good, man. He's so good, dude.
Yeah, from an acting perspective, from the performances, I think I agree with you that the Schofield kid was probably the worst. At least somebody that had a lot of screen time. But I just think that Morgan Freeman was in a freaking renaissance in the early to mid '90s. I mean, Driving Miss Daisy. He did Robin Hood with Kevin Costner. Like, I mean, the guy was just putting out banger after banger, and it didn't take long before the world to go, well, this is one of our great living actors here. And I think Eastwood knew that too, and that's why he cast him. But, I thought their chemistry was great. I really kind of believed the connection that Will and Ned had and the history that they had together. And when you find out that Ned was killed by Hackman, it just made it that much more, because it's obviously personal to Will. And, I mentioned earlier about just getting chills in that moment when he finds out, and one of the prostitutes is there, and she's kind of giving the story that Ned told Little Bill.
Right? Yeah.
And she's like, you killed XYZ, and you killed the U.S. Marshal in 1870, and like
Right. Yeah.
all these like train robberies and shit, and just all this like really vicious, evil shit. And he's just sipping the whiskey, like, and then he's like, that didn't scare Little Bill, did it? And then he goes back into town. Now, I want to ask you, because I always get really excited for like a first time seeing this. When he rides back into town to avenge Ned's death, Ned's, being displayed in front of the bar there, and he goes in, and they're all fucking planning on how to find him the next morning, right? It's pouring down rain. And he walks into the saloon with the fucking double barrel shotgun. Where were you at mentally? I mean, am I the only one that's just like literally like, and I mean, I've seen it 15 times and I get so excited.
Well, I mean, it calls to mind, like, you think about scenes like name your pick of a Tarantino scene where like the tension just gets ratcheted up and up and up and up. And I mean, it's a great, like, that's easily, rewind a little bit before that. That's easily, maybe I don't like the revelation in that scene quite as much. In terms of like it's the prostitute riding out there and saying the same story that Ned said to him. I don't know. I mean, granted, they won all the Oscars and stuff like that. I'm nobody, so who am I to tell them what's better? But like, I didn't maybe necessarily like the reveal of that, but I like that. Like that's the moment. Like you don't know. They never talk about what William Money's done, and you think about the way he is with his kids and how much he loved his wife. He won't sleep with the prostitute, because
Right.
he's still in love with his wife, even though she's been dead for years,
Right.
and like all these different stuff. So you're thinking the whole time, you're carrying the expectation into this movie that this is a noble man, this is an honorable man.
Right.
And that immediately, like when that's revealed to the audience, it completely demystifies that character. And like what I love about that is the way that it brings an audience member into conflict, because now you've been riding with this character this whole way, and you've been like, you've been rooting for him. Like, you've been rooting for him. He's the protagonist of the movie. Like, you want him to take down Little Bill because Little Bill's this, terrible evil sheriff. Beat him up when he had a fever. Like he's sick in the tavern,
Right.
has a fever, and Little Bill beats the crap out of him and throws him out of the tavern in the rain. Like all this different stuff. Nearly kills him. He nearly dies. And everything. So like that whole moment, like that moment in and of itself, when you watch it, it completely deconstructs everything about the movie right there in front of your eyes. And like that's like a masterstroke of screenwriting right there. The way it completely tears your expectations away. So like and then like you said, like then you have him go to the bar there, and then you have Ned there propped up in the casket, like outside of the bar, and like I said, that's when it's like watching those great Tarantino scenes, or any of those really great scenes in cinema where the tension just slowly, it's a little knob, slowly turns up, and you can feel it. You can feel you're waiting for something to happen, and then it goes with the direction that you don't necessarily expect either, because he shoots the owner of the saloon for putting Ned outside first. Skinny, he shoots Skinny first for putting him outside and everything. And that's the other kind of thing too, is you mentioned that, like as soon as he starts drinking, he hasn't been much of an outlaw. Like, let's face it, like up to this point in the movie, he can't shoot for a damn. Like he barely manages to like get a body shot on the one cowboy in the canyon when they're like shooting at him, and that's after like several shots of completely missing him.
And even
can't
then,
hit
he had
the can in his yard with the pistol even.
And even then, there was a great kind of character accolades for him as a character, because he tells him to take him water because he knows the kid's dying. He's like, I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
And we know that 10, 15, 20 years ago, William Money was not going to take him water. He was going to walk up to him and blow his head off. You know what I mean?
That's the interesting thing about it. Like that's where the genius of this movie really is. It's in that turn. It's in that revelation to the audience about like who this character really has been this entire time. And it's kind of a movie that's made for the audience in that sense, that it's like, this is the guy you've been rooting for this whole time. This is who you've been putting your lot in with. And
it's a shame too that the Schofield kids performance wasn't that great, because because he meets him as the old broken down pig farmers. And he doesn't know other than just what his uncles kind of told him, but he never sees with his own eyes that old murderous William Money. And when we fast forward and we see that, and that's what we see the whole movie, we hear people mentioning it and recollecting or whatever, but we never see anything that would lead us to believe that he was a scary figure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A violent figure. And then you fast forward to that scene on the hill, and the kid sees it, and we see it as the audience, and the kid's scared of him. He's like thinking that Will's going to kill him. He's like, I'm not going to kill you, kid. You're the only friend I've got, and to your point, we're kind of realizing it through that character, because he kind of came in with Clint at that old father taking care of his kids stage of his life. But I don't want you to skirt around. I want to hear what you thought when he goes into the saloon and we get that final with him and Little Bill. And I mean, I just want to know what you thought. I mean, every time I'm like, this is the greatest shit I've ever seen. Like, I just cannot get enough of it. And he does not give a fuck, dude. Like, he's like, I will kill every motherfucker in this saloon right now in Ned's honor. Like, I don't care. He's like, if you don't want to get killed, clear on out the back. You know what I mean? And it's one of those great moments in my memory as a movie lover. I want to know what you thought of that final kind of scene there.
I mean, okay, there's one thing I really hated about the final scene.
All right.
He crouches down, Gerald. He kneels down. I mean, he's got a shotgun. I mean, he's blowing dudes away, and it's great. I love the way the tension ratchets up in the scene. I love like that explosive like standoff. Like, I love that. But like, man, he's not even in cover. He's just crouching there. They're 3 feet away from him, and they can't hit him. Like,
right.
Stop it.
Right.
Stop it.
Beauchamp asked him after, and he says, "Yeah, I've just always been kind of lucky when it comes to killing folks."
Put him behind a table or something.
You know what I mean?
Something.
He doesn't need it, bro.
Because the way it's shot, it looks like money is literally like there's a dude with a revolver standing here, and he's 3 feet away, and the dude can't hit the broadside. The dude can't even hit him when he's like literally he's crouched on the floor, so he's a bigger target. Like, he's not even standing up, and like Clint Eastwood's thin and wiry, so like you could maybe like that was the only part of that scene that I was just like, seriously, come on, like that just annoyed me. But like the rest of it, like the scene's great. Like, I'm not gonna tell you the scene's not great. Like, it is really, really great. Like, it really, really is. And then especially like those like last moments, like that last like conversation with Little Bill, like Little Bill's still alive and
see you in hell.
Yeah.
He just says, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's all great.
Well,
like it's all really, really, really great, man. It really, really is.
When you hear people having all these memories as teenagers or kids and going to see Star Wars and all, superhero, and you mentioned Batman 89, for me, it was seeing Clint Eastwood walk is one of them for me, at least, is seeing Clint Eastwood walk into that saloon. And the sound design is awesome in this movie, that loud crashes of thunder.
Yep.
Because, it's pouring down rain.
I love all the rain in this movie. It rained a lot in this movie, and I really loved it. Because it's kind of antithetical to like your typical Western where everything looks really dry and everything. Everything was soaking wet in this movie. Everything was like looked like it was cold and damp and miserable. But again, that's part of that whole demystifying the West. Like, it wasn't like cowboys and outlaws and like these amazing gunslingers that are like you're supposed to look up to as these like heroic prophetic figures and like all this different stuff. It's they were bad people who did like really, really bad stuff,
right. And there was a lot of
miserable existence.
And there was a lot of things that were kind of placed throughout the movie too to lend to that point. Like, Beauchamp's character as the biographer for English Bob initially, and he's traveling with English Bob, and he's fascinated by all these kind of outlaw stories that English Bob's been giving him for his book, The Duck of Death, which I love, by the way.
I did love that. Every time that Hackman would say it, he kind of continually emphasized the duck of death.
Duck, I
it.
say.
Man, Hackman's so good, dude.
Yeah. But anyway, so, Beauchamp's with English Bob, but then Little Bill comes along, and English Bob kind of tells him who he is, and he's like, oh, Bill Daggett from, whatever. So he's like infamous too from the old days. So now he's interested in Little Bill. And then when you get ahead to the shootout at the saloon at the end, and Little Bill's kind of saying, oh, you must be William Money, killed women and children and, did this and did that. And the camera has that tracking close up on Beauchamp. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where he's like in awe that he's found somebody even more notorious than these fuckers that he's been following as a biographer. And I just thought it was cool how that little bit of commentary was sprinkled in there through Beauchamp's character about how, as a society, they're lifting up these, criminals and murderers, and in the days before like a lot of like fictional, superhero and all that crap was.
And I love that it was tearing that down. I really do love that it was tearing that down. I was trying to look, Gerald. I was trying to see like, man, like, Young Guns came out like 4 years before this, so like it would have ruined. I'm trying to think of who else could have played the Schofield kid, and I'm like, well, okay, like he's kind of like a discount Emilio Estevez, like the guy that played him in this movie. I'm like,
Sure,
yeah, but
yeah.
Young Guns was before this, so you don't want to revisit that. I'm trying to think of what young actor in the 90s, like early 90s,
Ooh.
could have filled in that role and given a much better performance, because like I just like, if it wasn't for that performance, like
One-
I see what you love about this movie. I love how it's a Western, and like you think about some westerns aren't necessarily known for how cerebral they are, but I think this is a really smart movie, and I think it really
agree.
plays against audience expectations. The way that it kind of, like I said, it turns your expectations of like you're rooting for this character that you then find out is this vile, despicable person, and then you kind of go into this shootout at the end of the movie, and you see this amazing tension building and everything like that. But like at the same time, as an audience member, on one hand, you were rooting for him, but on the other hand, like me as watching it the first time, I'm just like, I don't know if I really rooting for anybody here. You know,
Yeah.
I'd be
Yeah,
just as fine if this ended with everybody dead. You know,
Yeah,
like
it causes that dilemma within you. And when Clint
Yeah.
went into when Will went into the saloon thing, he didn't give a shit. Like
Yeah.
he probably thought he was going to die, but his goal was to kill little Bill. And as long as he did that, he literally didn't care. One thing I want to say about the Schofield kid, though, one of the there's a lot of really good like line deliveries in this movie from various characters, but one of my favorite ones is actually from him when he gets into that altercation with Ned, because Ned comes to the realization that the kid can't see. He's basically, his eyesight's horrible.
Yeah.
And so he's calling him out on it. And they get into a tizzy or whatever, and Clint's like, "Can you see 50 yards?" And the Schofield kid's like, "You're goddamn right, I can see 50 yards, and I can see far enough to shoot this son of a bitch sitting right in front of me." He's got the gun pointed on Ned.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite like one-liners in the movie too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good ones. The dialogue is memorable. The screenplay you already mentioned is great. I could talk about this movie for another hour. I love this movie. It's one of my all-time faves. I was hoping that Nicholas was going to come through with at least an 8 on this. I was like telling myself,
it probably
like,
to be honest, like it's kind of one of those
"Give me
movies
an
that
8."
it's kind of one of those movies that you think about more like after you
Sure.
watch it. So like it's something that could definitely end up bumping up for me on a rewatch.
All
But
right.
I just hated that performance, and like I get the point of the English Bob character. I just don't know if we needed that big of a setup to paint like little Bill as the evil bastard he was.
But I'm okay with it, with the scene that we got with Hackman in that.
Oh,
though.
you're
that
just
was his
okay with
Oscar scene,
everything.
really.
I mean,
That was
Hackman's
his
just
Oscar
that
scene,
good.
really.
Hackman's just that good. I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
Like I'm fine. I'm fine with that kind of stuff. Like I can forgive that stuff, but like that kid, like that performance was not.
What about
great. Especially,
what
and here's the
about-
problem. Here's the problem. He is in this movie, Gerald, with some heavy hitters acting wise. Hackman, Eastwood,
Oh yeah.
Freeman to a degree. Like, I mean, even Richard Harris, to throw him in there. Like, I mean, man, it's not even close, man. It's not like
I
it's
agree.
night and day. It's night and day, and that was it. It really, man.
What about
had been somebody else they could have.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely the weakest of the performances. What about any of the prostitutes like Strawberry Alice? That's Frances Fisher,
Yeah,
which was in Titanic, and she did some other. She's a good character actress.
she's in like good character actress. She's in literally everything in like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. So I thought she was good. I thought the lady that ended up getting cut up in the movie, Delilah, right? I think her name's Delilah, right? They cut her face up. I like that
Delilah,
actress too. I thought she did a good job.
Yeah.
But they were sympathetic figures. I felt like they, as a group, you did kind of. I don't know. The movie really does a good job because, like you said, you don't know really if you should pull for anybody. But I thought it did do a good job where, when the prostitutes were meeting together in their friendship and kinship, you were kind of like, yeah, I hope these bastards get killed. And then they have that scene where the one guy, who was really just his partner, wants to give her a horse as kind of like an apology.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, well, that guy's kind of sweet. Maybe I don't want him to die.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just really, the movie did a good job of like forcing you to kind of change your allegiances throughout the film. Because you never really knew who you were supposed to be rooting for in different scenarios. And then it comes to that ultimate climax where you really don't know, like, oh, okay, well, I've been following this Will Money, who's a struggling father pig farmer, but come to find out he's actually this murderous bastard that'll kill anything in sight. So I don't know what to feel. You know what I mean? I thought it was a very layered movie in that way, and that's why it's stuck with me for so many years. So
Yeah.
10 out of 10 for me, brother. By the way, we didn't do the math on this, so you said a 7. What is that? It's an 8 and a half?
8.5, G. I mean, that's still high.
That's pretty good.
That's
That's
still
pretty
high.
good. Yeah, I don't
You
know
dragged
if-
up the average on that one, see?
That's pretty good. Though.
Replaced it. I'm trying to look at other movies. What else was nominated for an Oscar in 1992? So, all right, other nominees this year.
Ooh, A Few Good Men, though. That's pretty good.
Other nominees this year was Pacino for Scent of a Woman. I've never seen Scent of a Woman.
Wait a minute, you're doing actor? I thought you were doing movie.
No. I was just looking at like the different performances. I'm trying to recast the Schofield kid here as literally anyone.
Oh.
Literally anyone else. I'd take Marissa Tomei. Take Marissa Tomei out of My Cousin Vinny and put her in this. Like, I mean, like literally, like
Oh man.
Michelle Pfeiffer's up in here. Susan Sarandon's up in here. Denzel's in here. Robert Downey Jr.'s in
could do it.
here.
Yeah.
There's like any number, like, I mean, you think about any number of like the actors that we know today that were coming up in like the early 90s and stuff that like would have been easy. Like, that's just me. That's just me. I'm saying that performance wasn't that, but like the rest of it, it's great. I mean, it's a really great movie. I don't think it ain't greatest western of all time.
Imagine if it had been like Brad Pitt. I mean, was he old enough at the time? He probably was, right? Because he was in Thelma and Louise in like 91. That would have been crazy, dude. Can you imagine Brad Pitt in that role? Wow.
I mean, just like I said, I don't know about best western of all time ever, but
Nah, it's up there. It's top 3, bro. It's
but
top 3.
no love for Once Upon a Time in the West, Jared. No, you gonna do that to me?
I mean, that's a good one.
You're gonna do that? Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. God, Dan's groaning and rolling his eyes right now because I know Dan was not as big of a fan of that movie. That movie is a stone cold masterpiece. Love that movie. Oh, it's so
All right,
good.
there you go, guys. Unforgiven from 1992 was this week's Roulette Retro
man.
Review.
Good pick.
Nick, thanks for discussing it with me, and I'm glad we were able to correct that blind spot for you.
Yeah,
So,
good pick.
I was hoping for an 8, but maybe we'll get that on the rewatch. So we'll see. We'll see if it grows.
Is it the no Schofield kid cut?
Yeah, it's the Marissa Tomei cut.
Somebody
This
just
movie would be
photoshops her
infinitely
character. Her
Yeah.
photoshops her character from My Cousin Vinny into the movie, and she's
This
sitting
movie
there
would
like
go.
yelling at Clint Eastwood in, like that Jersey accent or whatever.
Oh man, and then you have Jason Alexander in the background going, Marissa Tomei.
Do it.
Oh,
Do it. I want to see that. I want to see that movie now.
I do too. That would infinitely go to an 11 out of 10 for me right away.
Give it to
for
me.
Marissa Tomei in there. All right, Nicholas, how we wrap up every episode is we head over to the Facebook fan page, head over to social media and see what the fans had to say. In the old comment section, they throw questions at us each week. And I've got one I've been kind of honing in on here. What about you, man? Do you want to
go ahead and
first?
get
You
it?
wanna go
No, you
first?
jump on it, baby. You
So,
get mad at me for
Nerd-
stealing all the questions again if I do. So
I know. So Nerdtrovert, Jason, patron and friend of the show, he asked a couple questions, but he also says, where does this rank for you as far as Gene Hackman performances?
ooh, Hackman. Okay.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, man, this might be it for me. I think that when he plays that unsavory villainous role, and I'm not talking about Lex Luthor, which I also love, by the way, but that's more of a slapsticky villain, whereas in Unforgiven, he is just an unseedy bastard. So I think that's it for me. But the other one I wanted to shout out is the Birdcage. When he plays, have you seen the Birdcage with Robin
No.
Williams and Nathan Lane?
I'm very familiar with it though, but I know.
So he plays this. He plays this like conservative senator that they're trying to hide the fact that the other side of the parents are gay, which is Robin Williams and Nathan Lane. And when he gets brought into that world in Miami, he ends up dancing in drag and like all this other like stuff in kind of that underbelly of the gay community. And just seeing Gene Hackman do that is just such a fond memory for me. He absolutely nailed it and just felt so out of place, which I imagine is probably what he would be in real life. But I mean, aside from the birdcage, for me, it's Unforgiven. Do you have a favorite Gene Hackman performance?
I mean, it's gotta be Luthor, right? It's gotta be Lex Luthor for me.
Dude.
I'm too big of a Superman lover, like in terms of like the character. Like I don't think, aside from Superman 3, which just is terrible, I even really love the Superman 4 for all of its canon campiness and glory. Like I mean, but he's so deliciously great in that role. I really just I really just love him. I really do.
Probably the most memorable.
I'm looking through his
for sure.
filmography. I have not seen way too many Gene Hackman movies.
All right, man. What's your question you want to grab out there?
I mean, I was honestly, so a few different people asked a few different iterations of the same question ish. You can grab Brett from Dissect That Film. Nerdvert Jason also kind of asked like the same thing. Favorite Eastwood performance and favorite Eastwood directed film. Christiani also threw it in here. That was, what was the first Eastwood starring film and first Eastwood directed film you've ever seen? What would the first one you ever saw be that he directed and starred in? It's probably Gran Torino for me, I would think. I'm trying to think.
If I saw this was in 92. Bridges of Madison County was after this, I think. I really like that one too, with Meryl Streep. It may have been this. It may have been Unforgiven, honestly, for me. Yeah, that was 92.
I think honestly, it was probably Gran Torino was the first time I ever saw a Clint Eastwood directed by and starring. I mean, that movie's phenomenal.
No. I know what it is. It's Play Misty for me, which is actually what my sister's named after. Remember I told you my dad was a huge fan?
Oh, yeah.
So Play Misty for me, my sister's name's Misty, and it's directly taken from that movie. But that was the first one because that came out in 1971. I probably saw that when I was maybe like 10 years old. Yeah. So, that was the first one. But I didn't remember it. I had to look it up. But, yeah.
Yeah, I like that one. But, I mean... is there even a point in asking you what your favorite Eastwood directed movie is and your favorite Eastwood performance is? Is there even a point?
It's this, although there's an underseen gem that came out the year after this that is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably in my top like 30 or 40 films of all time. It's also directed by Eastwood. He stars in it with Kevin Costner, and it's a movie called A Perfect World. Have you ever seen that or heard of it?
Yeah.
No one has. Anytime I bring it up, they're either like no, or they're like, it sounds familiar, but I don't know what you're talking about, and I have to explain it. But it's a really, really good directorial effort from Eastwood in that film. But it's Kevin Costner's an escaped convict. I'll make this quick, but he ends up kidnapping an 8-year-old boy, and this is in the 1960s.
Yeah,
and he takes him on the run. He kind of holds him hostage. And him and the boy end up becoming very, very close because the little kid didn't have a dad, and he connects to Kevin Costner's character, and they just become tight. And Clint Eastwood is the U.S. Marshal that's hunting them down, trying to find him.
Yeah, okay.
That's the premise of the movie, but it's called A Perfect World. It has a devastating final act. One of the greatest, I'm just going to tell you right now, one of the greatest plot twists I've ever seen in real time in a movie, where I was like, holy shit, I can't believe that just happened. In the last act of this film. But yeah, I just want to give a shout out to A Perfect World, but I mean, aside from that, it's got to be Unforgiven.
Man, I'm just trying to think of like, I think we talked like, whether it was part of the episode or not, probably one of those parts we told Dan to cut out of the episode because we're cruel, evil people. Letters from Iwo Jima, I love that whole, like, he did both of those films. He did Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, about the two sides of that, that conflict, obviously, as part of World War II. I really love Letters from Iwo Jima. That is a phenomenal film. Really, really love that. Gran Torino is incredible. Like, just absolutely incredible. And like, just to throw some love at Bradley Cooper and American Sniper too. I really love that movie. Phenomenal performance by Cooper. in that movie as well. Like I've got too many blind spots in his older stuff, Eastwood's older stuff, unfortunately, both the acting and directing. But
And a quick shout out on Paul's behalf for 15-17 to Paris, because I know
I know, big fan, he loves that one. huge fan of that one.
To answer the question over there, that might be Eastwood's worst based on some of the reviews I was just reading, but I actually haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
So,
I haven't seen it. Paul has so vehemently detested it for so many years now. I'm not that brave, man. I trust Paul more than I'm brave enough to watch that movie. Like his description of it, like it was a terrorist attack, and like these guys stopped it because they were they Navy SEALs?
It's based on a true story.
But then Eastwood got the dudes that actually did it to be in the movie,
right?
Instead of getting actors to do it. And I guess it's really obvious because the people that are in it are actually really bad.
But he's done some interesting stuff. Like Richard Jewell was pretty good a few years ago.
I didn't see that one. I missed that one when it came out.
He did Sully with Tom Hanks.
Sully's great, dude. Sully's real good.
Yeah. So he's done some good stuff. I mentioned Bridges in Madison County, which I also really like. Okay, there you go. That's our Clint Eastwood Love Fest for the night. But Unforgiven. Nick, thanks for discussing it with me, man. It's one of my favorite of all time. And I love when I get a chance to revisit it.
It's real good stuff.
A 10 from me, which is not a shock, and a 7 from Nicholas on Unforgiven. It puts us at an 8.5 cumulatively on this retro review. Nick, next week we're going to go back out to the theater. We're going to check out The Holdovers, the new Alexander Payne film starring Paul Giamatti. That's been getting a lot of love this award season. I know you've been excited to see that one, so we'll check that out next week.
I mean, those two back together. I mean, Sideways is easily like top 10, top 20 of all time for me. I absolutely love that movie. I love Alexander Payne, so I've got big expectations in spite of the downsizing of his filmography. I still absolutely
in that case, I can't wait to shit all over this thing next week. I will get my scorecard from The Room back out and have it ready to go for you.
How dare you? I'm still waiting for you to rewatch The Room and recognize the error of your ways.
Maybe it'll go up to a 3 on a rewatch. You just got to get me to watch it 8 more times, and then I'll get a point each time. All right, so we'll do the Holdovers next week, guys, and then I don't know what we're doing. It's award season.
So much to watch.
There's a new release every week. I'm taking my son to see the new Godzilla this week.
It comes out. Yeah, it comes out here too. Yes, I can't wait to see it.
We were just talking about Dream Scenario with Nicolas Cage just came out. Like, I don't know, man. We'll figure it out. We'll let everybody know on the episodes what we're planning on covering. But next week it will be Alexander Payne's The Holdovers. Nicholas, until then, I love you, brother, and don't kill any women or children before we record next week.
When you turn up to record next week, you're gonna be like, Nick, somebody came here to find me in my recording studio, but I had long since abandoned it, and people couldn't understand why anybody would want to get with a no good podcaster like me.
I log on to the video call next week and just a tumbleweed blows by.
Man, if I could make that happen somehow, that'd be
good. Yeah,
that'd be dope.
You could.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'll talk to you then. I appreciate you.